walk-off that shook the NBA. One moment changed everything. Not a game-winning shot, not a viral dunk, not even a championship celebration. Instead, it was a walk, a silent walk. The final buzzer sounded. The confetti began falling. The New York Knicks had just captured the NBA championship behind an unforgettable performance from Jalen Brunson. Across the court stood a devastated Victor Wembanyama, the 1-year-old superstar who had carried the San Antonio Spurs all the way to the NBA Finals far earlier than anyone expected. And then it happened. No handshake. No congratulations. No embrace between competitors. Wembanyama turned and walked away. Within minutes, social media exploded. NBA analysts debated the moment. Fans chose sides. Some called it heartbreak, others called it disrespect. But then, Draymond Green entered the conversation, and suddenly, this wasn't just about a missed handshake anymore. It became personal. Draymond didn't simply criticize Victor's decision. He delivered a message that sounded more like a challenge than an observation. According to Draymond, true competitors look the person who defeated them directly in the eyes. They face the pain. They acknowledge the loss. They don't walk away from it. The comment instantly went viral. But here's what most fans don't realize. This wasn't the beginning of the story. This was the explosion. The fire had been burning for over a year, long before the finals, long before the handshake controversy, long before basketball fans realized these two stars were on a collision course. Because ever since Victor Wembanyama entered the NBA, Draymond Green has been watching, studying, questioning, and sometimes criticizing. At first, it seemed harmless. A veteran challenging a young star. An NBA champion testing the league's newest sensation. But over time, something changed. The comments became more frequent. The criticism became more specific. And the tension became impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, Wembanyama did something that may have frustrated Draymond even more than a direct response ever could. He stayed silent. No public attack. No social media war. No dramatic interview. He simply kept improving. Every month, Victor looked more dangerous. Every season, he looked closer to becoming the face of the NBA. And every time he dominated another game, the spotlight around him grew brighter. That's when this story stopped being about basketball, because beneath every public disagreement was a much bigger question. Was Draymond simply holding a young star accountable, or was he watching the future arrive faster than expected? One thing is certain, the walk-off after the finals wasn't the cause of this conflict. It was merely the moment that exposed it to the world. And once we go back through the timeline, piece by piece, you'll see why this rivalry may be far more complicated than anyone wants to admit. Because what happened between Draymond Green and Victor Wembanyama isn't just a disagreement between two NBA players. It's a battle between generations, a battle between two completely different approaches to greatness. And by the end of this story, you might see both men very differently. Before we continue, tell me where you're watching from today. Are you Team Draymond or Team Wembanyama right now? And if you're excited to uncover the full story behind one of the NBA's most fascinating conflicts, hit that subscribe button and type the number 1 into the comments if you're ready for the next chapter. Draymond saw the storm before everyone else. Draymond Green has never waited for permission to speak. That has always been his gift and sometimes his problem. When Victor Wembanyama entered the NBA, most people looked at him like he was basketball's next miracle. A 7'4" phenomenon with guard skills, alien timing, and the kind of defensive reach that makes even elite scorers hesitate before attacking the rim. But Draymond saw something else. He saw a young player being crowned before he had survived the hardest parts of the league. To Draymond, hype was never enough. Respect had to be earned through pressure, pain, losses, and moments where the game exposes who you really are. And because Draymond had built his entire career on toughness, intelligence, and confrontation, he was never going to simply bow down to the new superstar. So he started testing him. Not always directly, not always loudly, but the message was there. Victor still had to prove it. He had to prove he could handle the physicality. He had to prove he could carry a franchise. He had to prove he could dominate when every arena, every defender, and every veteran wanted to remind him that NBA greatness is never handed out for free. And maybe, at first, Draymond had a point. Wembanyama was young. The Spurs were still building. There were nights where he looked unstoppable, and other nights where the league reminded him how cruel professional basketball can be. But what Draymond may not have expected was how Victor would respond. He didn't argue. He didn't create headlines. He didn't chase Draymond's attention. He just kept growing, and that made everything more dangerous. Because every block, every three-pointer, every impossible highlight made Draymond's early doubts look a little weaker. The young star wasn't disappearing under pressure, he was absorbing it. And slowly, the veteran's challenge turned into something deeper. It became a question. Was Draymond trying to teach Victor, or was he trying to slow down something he already knew he couldn't stop? The young giant who refused to blink, Victor Wembanyama does not move like a normal young superstar. Most players his age would have reacted. They would have answered Draymond in a press conference. They would have posted something online. They would have turned one comment into a full-blown public battle. Victor chose a colder response. Silence. And that silence became louder than anything he could have said. Every time Draymond questioned him, Victor returned to the court looking calmer, sharper, and more locked in. He blocked shots that looked impossible. He stretched defenses beyond recognition. He forced opponents to change their entire offense just because he was standing near the paint. That is what made him so terrifying. He never looked like he was rushing to prove Draymond wrong. He looked like he already knew the answer. There is a difference between arrogance and certainty. Arrogance needs attention. Certainty does not. And Wembanyama carried himself like someone who understood that his future was too big to be distracted by every voice trying to pull him sideways. That is where Draymond's usual weapons started to lose power. Draymond is one of the greatest psychological players the NBA has ever seen. He talks, pokes, challenges, irritates, and forces opponents into emotional decisions. For years, that worked. But Victor would not give him the reaction. He would not become emotional just because Draymond wanted him to. He would not turn a veteran's criticism into his identity. And that may have bothered Draymond more than any direct insult. Because when your power is built on getting inside someone's head, the most dangerous opponent is the one who refuses to open the door. Victor didn't fight Draymond's noise. He rose above it, and by doing that, he made the conflict feel one-sided in the most brutal way possible. Draymond kept talking, Victor kept becoming the future. The veteran's mind game, Draymond Green understands basketball in a way most players never will. He sees angles before they open. He reads emotions before they explode. He knows when a young player is uncomfortable, when a star is frustrated, when a team is about to crack. That is why his words matter. They are never random. When Draymond talks about Victor Wembanyama needing to earn respect, he is not just giving analysis. He is setting a trap. He is trying to place pressure on a player who already carries the weight of an entire franchise. That is Draymond's game. Praise with a blade hidden inside. He can say Victor is talented, then immediately question his toughness. He can admit Victor is special, then suggest the league is protecting him. He can sound reasonable while planting doubt in the minds of fans, media, and maybe even opponents. This is what veterans do when they feel a young star coming. They test him. They want to know if he is just gifted or if he is built for the burden. But Victor never gave Draymond the collapse he may have been waiting for. He did not look shaken. He did not look desperate. He did not start forcing the issue just to prove a point. Instead, he played with patience, as if he understood something bigger. Draymond's words were not the real test. The real test was whether Victor could stay himself while everyone else tried to define him, and that is where this rivalry became fascinating. Because Draymond was playing the old game, pressure, noise, intimidation, reputation, Victor was playing a new one. Calm, distance, control, growth. Two basketball minds, two different eras, two completely different forms of power. And the more Victor refused to react, the more Draymond's comments started to reveal something he may not have intended. This was no longer just about holding a young player accountable. It was starting to look personal. The finals changed everything. Then came the NBA Finals, the stage that separates stars from legends. For Victor Wembanyama, just getting there was already a statement. In only his second year, he had dragged the San Antonio Spurs into the brightest lights in basketball. The young giant, who was once called hype, was now standing where only the strongest survive. Across from him stood the New York Knicks, led by Jalen Brunson, and Brunson was merciless. Every possession felt heavy, every mistake felt permanent, every fourth quarter became a test of nerve. The Knicks did not just beat the Spurs with talent. They beat them with experience, control, and the kind of toughness that turns a final series into a war of patience. Victor fought. He blocked shots. He scored through pressure. He tried to pull San Antonio back from the edge. But the finals do not care about potential. They only care about who is ready right now. And when the final buzzer sounded, the dream was over. The Knicks were champions. Brunson had delivered. The Spurs were left standing in the pain of almost. That is when Victor made the decision that changed the entire conversation. He walked off. No handshake with Brunson, no public moment of respect. Just a devastated young superstar leaving the floor while the world watched. Some fans understood it. They saw a 21-year-old competitor crushed by the biggest loss of his life. Others hated it. They saw disrespect, immaturity, and a failure to honor the opponent who had earned the crown. But nobody reacted louder than Draymond Green. For Draymond, this was not just emotion. It was weakness. It was a failure to face defeat. And once he said that publicly, the entire NBA conversation shifted. Because now Victor's walk-off was not just a finals moment. It became evidence in Draymond's case against him. And the real war of words finally began. Draymond's hardest message. Draymond Green did not soften the blow. He said Victor needed to look the man who beat him in the eyes. That line hit hard because it carried more than criticism. It carried the weight of Draymond's entire basketball philosophy. To Draymond, losing is not the part that defines you. Everyone loses, champions lose, legends lose, dynasties fall. The real test is what you do in the seconds after the loss becomes real. Do you hide from it, or do you stand there and face it? That was Draymond's point. In his mind, Jalen Brunson had earned that handshake. He had earned the acknowledgement. He had earned the right to stand across from Victor and be recognized as the man who won the battle. And honestly, there is a version of Draymond's argument that makes sense. Sportsmanship matters. Respect matters. The handshake line is not just a tradition. It is a reminder that even after all the trash talk, all the pressure, all the pain, the game is bigger than one player's heartbreak. But here's where the conversation turned. Because Draymond Green, of all people, was now lecturing someone about composure. That is why fans push back. They remembered the ejections, the suspensions, the heated moments, the times Draymond crossed lines and then defended himself afterward. They remembered that his own career has been filled with brilliance and controversy walking side by side. So when Draymond judged Victor, people asked the obvious question, is this wisdom or hypocrisy? Maybe it was both. Maybe Draymond was speaking from lessons he learned the hard way. Maybe he saw a young player making a mistake and wanted to warn him before it became a pattern. But maybe there was another layer. Because Draymond was not just correcting Victor. He sounded irritated by the way people protected him, and that irritation opened the door to the most uncomfortable part of the entire story. The double standard that exposed everything. Draymond's next point was simple. If he had done what Victor did, the reaction would have been completely different. And he is not wrong. If Draymond Green walked off the floor after losing the finals without shaking the opponent's hand, the internet would explode. Analysts would call him disrespectful. Fans would bring up every controversial moment of his career. The story would not last one night. It would last for weeks. But when Victor did it, many people gave him grace. They said he was young. They said he was emotional. They said he was heartbroken. That difference is real. But the reason behind it is where Draymond's argument gets complicated. Victor Wembanyama is still building his reputation. He is seen as thoughtful, calm, respectful, and almost unusually mature for his age. Fans look at him and see the future of the sport. They want to believe in him. They want to protect the image of what he might become. Draymond does not get that benefit anymore. Not because the world randomly chose to dislike him, but because reputations are built over time. Every technical foul, every suspension, every heated confrontation, every viral argument became another brick in the wall around Draymond's public image. Fair or unfair, that wall changes how people view everything he does. Victor's story still feels open. Draymond's story already has scars, and that may be what bothers him most. Because Draymond knows he has accomplished things Victor has not. 4 championships, defensive greatness, dynasty moments, respect from the smartest basketball minds in the world. Yet Victor received something Draymond never truly had: uncomplicated love. And when Draymond points at the double standard, it sounds less like a media critique and more like a man asking why the world never looked at him that way. That is what made the drama deeper than basketball. It was no longer just Victor versus Draymond. It was reputation versus image, legacy versus potential, a veteran who feels judged by his past against a young star still being protected by his future. Jealousy or truth? This is the question that divided the NBA world. Is Draymond Green telling the truth, or is he jealous? The answer may be uncomfortable because it could be both. Draymond is right that Victor received more patience than he would have received. He is right that NBA media treats different players differently. He is right that public image can protect one player while destroying another for the same action. But he may also be revealing something deeper. Jealousy does not always mean wanting someone else's talent. Draymond does not need to envy Victor's gifts. Draymond has rings, respect, influence, and a place in basketball history. He helped change the way defense is played in the modern NBA. But jealousy can be about peace. It can be about how easily someone else is loved. It can be about watching a younger player walk into the league and receive patience, admiration, and protection that you never felt you had. Draymond had to fight for everything. He was undersized, overlooked, questioned, doubted. Even at his peak, people debated whether he was great or just a product of Golden State's system. Victor walked in and was called the future before he had played a single NBA playoff game. That contrast would bother almost anyone. And Draymond is too proud to admit that pain directly. So it comes out as criticism. It comes out as special treatment. It comes out as look your opponent in the eyes. It comes out as a veteran trying to hold on to control of a conversation that is slowly moving away from his era. Meanwhile, Victor keeps giving him nothing. No emotional reaction. No public war. No headline quote. And that silence makes Draymond look even louder. That is the cruel twist. The more Draymond speaks, the more Victor's calm becomes powerful. The more Draymond attacks, the more Victor looks untouchable. And whether Draymond means to or not, he is helping build the very myth around Wembanyama that he seems frustrated by. Old era versus new era. This story is bigger than one handshake. It is bigger than one podcast quote. It is bigger than Draymond Green and Victor Wembanyama. This is the NBA changing in real time. Draymond represents an era that dominated basketball. The Warriors dynasty, the small ball revolution, the emotional fire, the trash talk, the switching defense, the belief that intelligence, toughness, and chemistry could break bigger and stronger teams. That era changed everything, but it is no longer at the center of the league. Steph Curry is closer to the end than the beginning. Klay Thompson is no longer beside him in the same way. The Warriors' empire that once felt untouchable now feels like history trying to remain present. Draymond is still competing, still talking, still fighting. But the league is moving, and Victor Wembanyama is the clearest symbol of where it is going. He is not just tall. He is not just skilled. He is a different basketball possibility. A player who can protect the rim like a center, shoot like a wing, handle like a guard, and change the geometry of the court just by existing. That kind of player does not simply join the NBA. He forces the NBA to adapt, and for someone like Draymond, that has to feel strange. He spent his career helping define a basketball future. Now he is watching another future arrive. One that does not need his approval, one that does not fear his voice, one that may not even consider him central to the story. That is why this conflict feels so emotional. Draymond is not just arguing with Victor. He is arguing with time. He is arguing with the uncomfortable truth that every great era eventually gets replaced. And Victor is not trying to disrespect him, he is simply moving forward. That may be the hardest part for Draymond to accept, because the future does not always fight the past. Sometimes it just walks past it. What this beef really teaches us. So what does this conflict really mean? It means greatness is not only measured by talent, rings, or viral moments. It is also measured by how a player handles pressure, criticism, reputation, and change. Draymond Green has a lesson to teach, whether people like him or not. He knows what it takes to win. He knows the cost of championship basketball. He understands that respect between competitors matters, especially after painful losses. Victor Wembanyama also has a lesson to teach. He shows that silence can be powerful, that not every criticism deserves a reaction, that the strongest response is sometimes growth, discipline, and refusing to let someone else control your emotion. But both men also have something to learn. Victor must understand that leadership comes with responsibility. When you become the face of a franchise, every action is watched. Even pain must be carried carefully. Walking away may be human, but facing defeat with grace can become part of a champion's identity. Draymond must understand that truth lands differently depending on who delivers it. If you want to teach, your past follows you into the room. People will not only hear your words, they will remember your actions. And that is where this story becomes bigger than basketball. Every athlete eventually faces a moment where emotion and reputation collide. One mistake can become a headline, one reaction can become a label. One painful night can follow a player for years if he does not learn from it. The smartest stars understand that legacy is built not only when the cameras love you, but also when the cameras catch you hurting. For Victor, the next step is not just becoming more dominant. He already has the talent. The next step is learning how to carry disappointment like a leader. The NBA does not just need him to block shots, hit threes, and change the future of the game. It needs him to show younger fans that losing with respect is not weakness. It is strength under pressure. For Draymond, the challenge is different. He does not need to prove he is tough. Everyone already knows that. What he has to prove now is whether his voice can become wisdom instead of noise. A veteran's greatest power is not always calling people out. Sometimes it is guiding the next generation without needing to defeat them in public. That is the real lesson. Reputation matters, self-control matters, respect matters. And in a league built on competition, the greatest players are not the ones who never feel anger, pride, or jealousy. They are the ones who learn how to transform those emotions into something better. This beef does not need to become hatred. It can become fuel. For Victor, fuel to return stronger, wiser, and more prepared for the next finals moment. For Draymond, fuel to reflect on how his voice can still shape the game without always turning every young star into an enemy. Basketball is at its best when generations challenge each other not to destroy one another, but to raise the standard. The old guard teaches toughness. The new generation brings possibility. And somewhere between those two forces, the game evolves. Maybe that is what fans should take from this. Not every disagreement has to become a war. Not every mistake has to become a permanent stain. Not every criticism has to be answered with anger. Sometimes the strongest move is to listen, improve, and let time reveal who was right. Because peace does not mean avoiding competition. Peace means competing without losing your humanity. It means wanting to win badly, but still respecting the person across from you. It means understanding that rivals can push each other higher without tearing each other down. Now, the question is simple. When Victor Wembanyama gets another chance on the biggest stage, will he handle it differently? And when Draymond Green speaks again, will it sound like wisdom, or will it sound like a man still fighting the future? Only time will answer that. But one thing is clear, this story is not over. If you made it to the end, tell me where you're watching from and comment 1 if you believe Wembanyama is the future of the NBA, or comment 2 if you think Draymond was right to call him out. And if you enjoy deep NBA stories like this, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and share it with another basketball fan who needs to hear the full story.